Hi, this is Brian Hofschild. We are standing outside a house in Port Huron at 116 Taylor, and I want to spend a few minutes sharing with you some things you can be looking for if you are looking to buy a house in the near future and you're going out looking at different houses. It's a very good idea to have a friend who's experienced in construction or remodeling, or have a home inspector come and take a look at your home before you buy it. Here's some things you can look at yourself, just some tips to be paying attention to as you're looking at houses, just things you can be aware of as you're going from house to house, noting different things about homes. I'll walk through this house right here and just give you a few tips and pointers, things you can be looking for as you're looking at houses. Okay, this house right here, let's take a look at the foundation. When you examine a foundation, it's good to make sure that you don't have any cracks in it, any spots where the mortar, where the bricks have shifted and separated. If the foundation's sinking in one corner of the house, bricks might crack and separate. This one looks pretty good here. New windows are very nice to have, glass block windows. That's a good idea. New windows are excellent in the house. You want to make sure that they're caulked, around the outside. Look for caulking. Obviously, new windows are good. They're going to help you have low heat bills. When you're looking at a roof, let's see if I can back up here and show you this roof. This roof has probably 2 or 3 layers of shingles on it, and some cedar shakes even underneath that. I don't know if it's possible to see with this camera, but when you're looking up here, you can see above the gutter there is a little square aluminum wrap, a piece of trim that goes underneath the existing shingles. The reason why that's there is that's wrapping around probably a couple layers of shingles. The more layers of shingles on the roof, the more expensive it is to take off. This roof doesn't leak, but it is old and it needs to be replaced in the near future, so you're going to want to just budget that in, in the next maybe 5 years or so, or maybe 8 years. You probably have to get a new roof. Yeah, if you can see, I don't know how detailed this camera is, but let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Nope, I guess I can't zoom in. Okay, sorry. Well, anyways, I don't know if you can see, right up against the edge where the shingles are, as you look up there, you only see 1 layer of shingles on the edge. Well, that's because underneath there is some aluminum wrap. Aluminum drip edge is pretty thick. And the reason why they did that is because they were just wrapping around all of the couple layers of shingles and cedar shakes that are up there already. So that'll be a big expense. It might cost $8,000 to hire a company to come in here, rip off all these shingles and replace and put new ones in. Here's a really old roof in the garage, even older than the house. You can see the shingles are worn. That's pretty obvious. Obviously that's going to have to be redone sometime. It's just a garage right now, that's why I didn't do it on this house, but something you should be aware of. Roofs do cost money. So as you're looking at houses, you want to check the age of the roof. Let's go inside this house now, and talk about a few of the important areas like heating, electrical, and plumbing. One of the biggest things I look at when I want to buy a house and move into it is, what are my heat bills going to be? How much are my heat bills going to be for the next 20 years? I don't want astronomical heat bills. I want to make sure there's insulation in the walls, so you can knock on the walls. That's kind of a difficult way to tell. I did open these walls up so I know there's insulation in this house. But you want to find out if the house is insulated or not. It's possible to insulate a house if it doesn't have insulation. You can lift the siding up and drill holes and blow insulation in all the walls. But that's something you want to be aware of. Figure out, is there insulation in the walls? Is there insulation in the attic? So go up in the attic and take a look around and see if there's blown in insulation in areas. And that's going to save you a lot of money over the years with your heat bills. In this house, what we did was we eliminated a couple windows. That's a good way to save some money on heat bill. So we had a window right here we eliminated. We had another one right here we eliminated. We also had one in the bedroom upstairs that we eliminated. If you can eliminate a window, that's a great idea. If you don't need the light, that's a great way to save some money on heat. And we put insulation in there, obviously, before we did that. But that's a good way to cut back on costs. Obviously, new doors are great. As you look around the door, you want to just check for light coming through to see if there's any gaps where air can come in. That's a problem that's easily fixed if there is. You just have to buy some weather stripping and seal those gaps up. But that's a big deal. If you have air coming in, then you're gonna let cold air in the winter Let's go downstairs and take a look at foundation walls and stuff like that down here. Okay, here we are. This house has water problems, so that is fixable, and it usually costs between, you can spend between $500 and $5,000 fixing a water problem in a basement. Some techniques that you can use to solve a water problem are using Drylok. That's a masonry waterproofing paint, and Drylok works very well. I've used it in the past to solve some problems. It doesn't solve all problems. It only solves some problems, but it's very inexpensive, and it works excellent on walls, but not on floors. So if I moved into this house, that's the strategy I would implement here. Is I would start by using Drylok in areas just to see what that's going to do, because it might work, and it's very inexpensive. The trick with that stuff is Drylok has got to go on top of bare walls. So as we're looking at this spot right here, you can see this is bare, okay? The cinder block is exposed, and then right beside it you've got stucco or paint. Drylok does not work if you put it over top of paint or over top of stucco. It only works when you apply it directly to the block. The reason is because the block actually absorbs the Drylok, and the Drylok like hardens and expands, I think, inside. But I know it creates a waterproof barrier. The block absorbs it and locks the water out, and so that prevents water from leaking in. You may still run into problems with it leaking down and up through the floor later, but it's possible just by blocking the walls you can stop it from coming in, and it might get down into the drain tile. If you have drain tile in the house, which you probably do, that might take care of the problem. So I've used that technique a few times, and it has worked, but many times we have to go further and do extra work. But just be aware, if you do use Drylok ever, you're going to want to put it on the block directly. You may have to rent a sandblaster and sandblast off some paint. But if I only had one area of the house, one wall that was leaking really bad, I would probably rent a sandblaster, sandblast the paint off, put the Drylok product on there, and then that might solve the problem if it was just like one wall of the house. It's a lot cheaper than doing the drain tile system or something more expensive. Some other options for dealing with dealing with water in the basement are drain tile systems. This is what we do when we do a drain tile system. Is like here, for example, we would actually bust the concrete up about 16 inches out, and then we would dig down 16 inches, and we would do that in a perimeter around the entire basement. Then we put in drain tile, pea gravel, and we tile that into the sewer lines, and then the water doesn't enter into the house. The drain tile system collects the water and weeps it away into the drain system of the house. That works really good, but that's pretty expensive. That can be like, $3,500 to $5,000 to do that type of work. Another strategy you could use is just digging a hole in one corner and putting in a sump pump. If there was one corner of the house that was really bad and a lot of water came in there, that might cost you $500. Just in one corner, dig a hole in the floor, put in a crock, a sump pump, and pump the water out somewhere. So that's another strategy. Let's take a look at some heating and plumbing. Okay, over here we have plumbing. Now this type of plumbing is PVC plumbing. It's white plastic. It's very good. It usually stays very clean on the inside. Doesn't like gunk up and corrode and get blocked over time. Like this stuff down here is galvanized. This old rusty stuff. And if you see that throughout the entire house, that can be a problem in the future. It's not necessarily going to be a problem, but the problem with this old stuff is that it gets all rusty and gross and corroded in over time, and eventually what has to be done is it has to be cut out and replaced with white plastic. So if you see white plastic for drain lines, okay, that's good. All right. So this house has some CPVC for the water supply lines. That's for the hot water and cold water. CPVC is not the best. It's not the worst. The worst is the old galvanized lines, and I probably can't show you an example of that in this house. The old galvanized lines, they look kind of like this right here, like these gray lines, this gray nipple right here. But this is a brand new one. But if you see old galvanized lines, they might look like this gas line right here, which you can't see that because it's dark. But looks kind of like the same as this. This is black pipe right now. Galvanized lines are just the same size. They're just gray or silverish. But if you see those type of lines in your house, you know that the water supply system is pretty old, and there's a very good chance the water pressure is going to go down over time, because what happens is on the inside the pipes get more and more corroded, and the opening keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller over time, and eventually your water pressure gets lower and lower and lower. The only way to solve the problem is to rip out the pipes and put in new pipes. So CPVC is the cheapest. That's this plastic stuff here, okay? The advantage of this stuff is it's fast, it's cheap. It does stay clean on the inside forever, so you don't got to deal with it getting corroded and getting smaller and smaller and smaller over time like galvanized pipes. But the disadvantage of this stuff is that it breaks really easily, especially if the house ever freezes. A lot of it will shatter. I mean, if you keep the heat on in the house, you should be absolutely fine. But this is the cheapest type of plumbing out there to buy. Two other types you can buy is copper. Copper is the best. It is the most expensive, and it looks like this right here. It's got that reddish brown color. Copper, if you see that throughout the entire house, you know that it's a very expensive system. And it's going to last forever, and it's not going to freeze and shatter as easily. It's a lot more durable, a lot better quality. Another type of plumbing that sometimes you'll see in houses, which is a relatively new product, is called PEX. That would be a plastic product. It's a lot better than CPVC. It would be red and blue probably. Red for hot water, blue for cold water. That's kind of nice because it bends and twists, and you can snake it throughout the entire house. And it's actually quite amazing. If it freezes, it just expands. It doesn't shatter. So it's a lot more durable. It's very good quality. It's almost as good quality as this copper stuff. And I use it on a lot of houses. If you see that though, you don't got to worry. It's good quality stuff, and it'll last a lot longer than the CPVC. You also don't got to worry about it getting stolen. That's the nice thing. If your house is ever vacant, no one's going to come in and steal your PEX, but they will come in and steal your copper out of your house. Let's look at this hot water heater. This is a normal hot water heater. It's new. You can take a look at it. It's clean. Just examine the year on it. You know, this one says 2002, and I don't know if it's possible to see when this was purchased, but there's different types of hot water heaters. You can get 30 gallon, 40 gallon, and 50 gallon. Normal size would be a 40 gallon hot water heater, and a large one would be a 50 gallon hot water heater. When I look at a hot water heater, you know, I want to see that it's nice and clean. There's not a lot of leaks, not a lot of rust around the top, and then not a lot of rust along the bottom. Okay, if you see rust along the bottom, you know the hot water heater's getting older. Or if you see a lot of rust spots on the top, you know, from pipes leaking or whatever over time, you know it's probably an older hot water heater. This one, I think it's only been used for about a year. That's what the former owner told me. But you just look at the hot water and tell it's nice and clean and new. Yeah, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's look at a furnace for a minute. Over here we have a high efficiency furnace. Okay, there's a lot of different furnaces out there, but many different brands. I'm not going to get into all that, but I will explain. The biggest difference that you should be aware of is there's basically two types of furnaces. There's a regular furnace, which is going to be about 80% efficient, and then there's a high efficiency furnace, which is going to be, 90 to 95% efficient. The simplest way to tell the difference between the two is take a look at the exhaust pipe coming out the top. If it's a white pipe like this, you know it's a high efficiency furnace. There's a fan in there that actually blows the exhaust up through here and out through the side of the house. That's a high efficiency furnace. And then there's also going to be water is produced as a byproduct of the combustion process when you have a high efficiency furnace. And so there's going to be a drain line like this one right here on the floor. Or it might drain into a little pump that pumps the water into a small hose which goes into a laundry sink. But there's going to be some kind of drain somewhere. It might drain at the bottom of the furnace if it's near a drain. But the easiest way to tell is look at the exhaust coming out the top. Is there a white pipe coming out the top? If there is, then it's a high efficiency furnace, which means you're going to have lower heat bills. If it has a gray pipe coming out the top, like for example on this hot water heater, this would be a normal hot water heater, not a high efficiency hot water heater. This would mean that the chimney comes out the top of the furnace and goes into a real chimney, which goes outside. That would mean you have a regular furnace, which is probably 80% efficient. Now, if the furnace is old, like 20 years old or 30 years old, it's not going to be 80% efficient. It's probably going to be more like 50% efficient. So you want to get those replaced as soon as possible. The reason why you want to replace your furnace, after it gets to be about 15 years old, if it's 20 years old, definitely, is because the couple $1,000s it's going to cost you to get your furnace replaced is really only like what, 20 bucks a month, $30 a month. And you're going to save a lot more than that on your gas bills in the winter. You're going to save $100, $200 on your gas bills in the winter. So you're actually saving money every month. Even if you don't have the money to buy the furnace, you're better off charging it to a credit card or rolling it into a loan with the house when you buy the house, because you will save money in the long term. Every year you'll be saving money. So that's furnaces, plumbing. We talked about that. Let's talk about electrical a little bit. This is an old panel here. It's got these push button fuses. So this is pretty old. It might be, 20 years old, 30 years old is my guess. It doesn't have the fuses. The fuses are those ones that screw in and screw out. And those are not fun at all. Anytime I see those, I try to replace it with a brand new panel with modern circuit breakers. This one is, it could probably be replaced, but I'm sure it is functional. And at least they're push button. So when the circuit breakers pop, you just got to push a button to reset them. You don't have to keep going buying fuses and replacing fuses. That's no fun. Let's look at the wires for a moment. Wires in houses, if they're white and yellow, okay, that's good. That means they're modern. Okay, they have ground wires inside of them, and that's good. These ones here are older. They're grayish, and these ones do have ground wires in them, but they're like, they could be, who knows, 40 years old, 50 years old. At least this house doesn't have any knob and tube wiring. If it did, I could show you. But knob and tube wiring is like, 70, 80 years old, 100 years old. And it's not really the safest. If you have that in a house, try and get it replaced as much as possible. I guess I can just try and explain knob and tube wiring to you. It's got like, there's going to be these little porcelain cylinders on the rafters. They're going to go this tall, porcelain cylinders, and I'll have these tiny little black wires, you know, strung from cylinder to cylinder throughout the entire house. They won't have like 3 wires all wrapped together like these ones up here. You can tell these wires, even these old ones here, you can tell they're thick enough, like as thick as my finger. So they've got 3 wires inside there, a hot wire and a ground wire and a neutral or common wire. So inside here there's 3 wires inside each of these lines, even these old ones here. And the easiest way to determine that is look at the electrical panel above it, and you can see all the wires going into the electrical panel. Then you know if you got any old knob and tube wiring in the house. Unless they connected to it somewhere else in the house, which hopefully that happens sometimes, but not usually. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah, so there's hopefully some tips for you to pay attention to. Take a look at your electrical, your plumbing, your heating, and then the foundation. Oh yeah, let's look at the foundation walls. The easy way to look at the foundation is to look down the foundation wall. Okay, like let's see if we can do this here. Look down the foundation wall like this. Get up close against it and look down it. Try and tell if the foundation wall is straight up and down, or if it's cracked in the middle and it's the ground on the outside is pushing it in. That happens a lot in these older houses. If there's a lot of clay on the outside of the house and the foundation walls are weak, there might be cracks in the middle of the walls, and then the ground on the outside is heaving or pushing on the foundation walls, and then you'll see a bow in the middle. Now here you can't really, it's pretty straight up and down. That's a good way to analyze each foundation wall. If there's a major push on the inside and a big bow, then you know you got a problem, and the house isn't going to fall over tomorrow, but you know, in the next 20 years, 30 years, you're probably going to want to have to get that addressed, which means probably digging on the outside and ripping down the wall, or rebuilding the wall so it's nice and straight, and then putting sand on the outside so there's no pressure exerted on pushing the foundation walls in. But that's a good way to analyze foundation walls. Look for cracks in the foundation walls, yep. So hopefully that helps you out. And I'm sure there's going to be some more tips I'll have in the future, so I'll try and put them on video and post them on this website. And if you have any questions or you need any assistance in analyzing a property that you're looking at, I'm more than happy to assist first-time home buyers in looking at houses and figuring out what needs to be done, how much is it going to cost, and how can you negotiate with the banks to get a better deal on the property so that you have the budget that you need to do the repairs to the property so that you can move in to a perfect home. Okay? Thanks. This is Brian Hofschild, and my number is 810-434-3609.